Hello everyone, I'm Lord Pog and welcome to Lord Pog Gaming. I know I haven't really put out a video in a minute except for my Bethesda rant, but I wanted to get this video out here even though it's not one of my more in-depth videos, just so I could have other content on the channel.
Look, I made you some content. Daddy made you your favorite open wide.
For you wonderful viewers. I hadn't planned when originally writing the script on saying anything because at the time it wasn't a thing, but I noticed that I've reached over 100 subscribers and I just need to let you all know that I am blown away by this. When I first started this channel, I couldn't have imagined that I'd even get 100 subscribers. I didn't think I'd get 20 subscribers if I'm being honest, and here I am already reaching over 100. So, I mean, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. I want you all to know I am humbled by every single one of you out there in the audience. And to you new subscribers who are yet to come, and maybe that's me being a little bit arrogant, I shouldn't assume, maybe I've peaked, and if that's the case, then I'm more than happy to have what I have. Point being, yeah, I don't want to get too mushy here. Just thank you so much. You all are just these wonderful, beautiful treasures out there, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. As corny as that sounds, and believe me, I can hear myself in my own head being like, shut up, dude. I need you to know that you all are just, you mean the world to me. Thank you so much. But with that said, today we're going to start a series of R&R videos, and R&R is shorthand for rest and relaxation. Normally that's what that means, but I use it for retro review. And I'm going to review one of my favorite retro games from the past. So you're welcome to sit a spell. It's going to be a series of 4 videos based upon RPGs for the Sega Genesis that as a kid I loved to play. Every time I'd see one of these 4 games pop up on the Sega channel, I knew instantly that I was going to play that game. And for that month, it was probably only going to be that game. Now, for all intents and purposes, I know Sega wasn't known for its RPGs, not like the Super Nintendo, who had hits like the Final Fantasies, The Secret of Mana, Shadowrun, Earthbound, and of course, the incomparable Chrono Trigger. And that's just to name a few, but those are the big hits. Still, for what Sega lacked in its RPGs, it made up for, in my mind, with these 4 particular RPGs that I'm going to be talking about. I feel, personally, that they were worth my time, each and every single one of them. They were worth the time that I put into them. And so we're going to start with this one, and as time goes by, I'm going to slowly do reviews on the other 3. So, join me, won't you, audience? My wonderful, beautiful audience, as we begin this tribute to my childhood. And we'll just see if these games are even as good as I remembered. But before we get into our first R&R, I gotta do the thing here. My shameless plug. I know, but I gotta do it. So if you're new to the channel, or you've been here before and like what I do, then I humbly ask that you leave a like on the video. It means the world to me and gives a guy a feeling of accomplishment. Plus, if I got you feeling a type of way, go ahead and subscribe and share the video, as it gets my name out there amongst the ever-present YouTube algorithm. Okay. Oh, also, I guess there's this thing called the bell, the bell icon, that if you click it, it'll notify you when I put new stuff out there, when I introduce new product. I haven't really been paying attention to it, and I probably should have been, So I guess if and you don't mind, go ahead and ring my bell, if you, like I said, no pressure. And one final thing, if it tickle your fancy, go ahead and sign my guest book below. My guest book, that's what I'm calling my comment section. It doesn't have to be anything more than a hello, but it really does help me feel like I'm moving in the right direction with the channel. I'm not expecting anything like major, you could just be like, yo, hey, Pog, how's it going? Doing a good job, man. And I'll be like, oh, all right, thank you. Or you can be like, hey, Pog, you're terrible. And I'll be like, aw, all right. But seriously, I'd really would appreciate it, y'all. Okay, that's all. I'm not gonna harp on this any longer.
I don't like to harp on a subject,
I don't
but
care. It comes with me, never have. That's why they call me gregarious.
Let's get into today's what? Let's get into today. What in the world is... I'm from the South, everybody, and it just really plays heck on my accent sometimes. So let's get into today's R&R, and it's gonna be about the first game that I discovered on the Sega channel. Not really the first game, but it's definitely up there. I think there was like this one and one other that I discovered on the Sega channel when we first got it, and I was instantly hooked by its style and story. I love this game. I went back and replayed it, and it just I still love it, even though the mechanics are kind of wonky, and we'll get into all that in a little bit, but it is as good as I remembered. So join me, won't you, down memory lane as we review Beyond Oasis. Beyond Oasis is a 1994 game for the Sega Genesis and was developed by Ancient, who did a lot of work for Sega in their day. Some of Ancient's credits go to the Streets of Rage series, along with Sonic the Hedgehog, which they developed for the Sega Master System. The company was founded by composer Yuzo Koshiro, which, Mr. Koshiro, I hope I pronounced that correctly. If I didn't, I'm really sorry, man. But more on him later, as his story is actually pretty interesting. Plus, I gotta pad out some of this review's runtime.
You serious?
Known as the story of Thor overseas, for some odd reason, they would change it in North America to Beyond Oasis, which is just interesting to me. I didn't know this until I started researching all this for the game. The style of its gameplay, which I'll delve into more later, did remind me of, even as a child, it reminded me of The Legend of Zelda, primarily A Link to the Past, except instead of being the high fantasy aesthetic, Beyond Oasis is more akin to a Middle Eastern vibe.
Well, excuse me, princess.
Save for the fact that our main protagonist, Ali, has blonde hair and blue eyes. Originally, the kingdom was named Thor, and the world was called Oasis, but a retranslation that used to be available showed this, but the link has now become an invalid ID, meaning you can't find the retranslation game anymore. At least I couldn't. It is probably still out there. Also, the main protagonist, Ali's name, used to be Lo, but was changed to Ali because of how popular Disney's Aladdin was here in the States. Just imagine that. Disney at that point in time, in '94, was doing something right. To quote the great Matt McMuscles, "What happened?" Star Wars should have been a slam dunk, but we're not going to get into all that. However, turning Lo into Ali seemed to be a sensible choice, since the game does have a definitive Arabian Nights sort of feel.
Arabian Nights.
But why I say this game is all over the place is the fact that Ancient named the kingdom Thor, and as a kid, I was not privy to all that info. But even as an adult, having played this game several times over, I find it bonkers how the Japanese developers can clearly use the name like a link, use a game, use the name? What am I talking about? Use a game like A Link to the Past, which is obviously European high fantasy, deck the game out with Arabian flair, then jump all the way over to Norse mythology for the name. I mean, that, maybe I'm being a little too harsh with that, or a little too drastic, I guess I should say, because, you know, European high fantasy and Norse mythology are closely related in some form or fashion, but man, it's just crazy what they were doing with this game, right? I guess it's not such a stretch to connect, though. Just look at what Tolkien did with it when he connected it all together, right? And I point this out, not for you, my dear audience, but for Amazon, since they definitely need to start paying attention to Tolkien's works.
Look how they massacred my boy.
If they're going to continue with this charade that is the Rings of Power, and yes, I make no bones about saying that, it's a charade, then Amazon, start doing your research, okay? I mean, just one of you. You only need to pay one of you to read the books. That's all you need to do. But I digress. Beyond Oasis was relatively received well, despite its less than in-depth plot, which I'll get into more in the plot section. Game Informer, yes, that Game Informer, gave it an 8.75 out of 10 back when they used to try and have a more honest take on things. This might not mean much to the modern gamer and our jaded sensibilities, since Gone Home got rave reviews, and that's just a glorified walking simulator with a mid-plot. It's important to remember that in those days, though, games were reviewed less on politics and more on innovation. We didn't have Big Brother working to control the narrative nearly as bad as in the 90s, or in the 90s it wasn't. What is it that I'm trying to say here exactly?
But we are concerned about troubling the irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
Well, Big Brother wasn't in our faces about everything just yet in the 90s. A better example of this is IGN. Yes, that IGN. And they gave it, on its re-release, an 8 out of 10, while still giving Gone Home a whopping 9.5 out of 10. But Game Informer would actually only give Gone Home an 8.5 out of 10, which means they gave Beyond Oasis a better review when it first came out. And why am I bashing Gone Home so badly? Because the preview for it made it seem like it was like the sinister, like weird, game. And it, like I said, it's just a walking simulator and not worth playing. I just count my lucky stars that there are still honest game reviewers out there, and they did not let me make the mistake of buying that game.
Dear Lord Baby Jesus, or as our brothers to the south call you, Jesus, we thank you so much for this bountiful harvest of...
Electronic Gaming Monthly would give Beyond Oasis a 38 out of 50. And GamePro would make a comment that it wasn't a game for hardcore RPG fans, which doesn't sound too kind, but they would also say that it's a nice jumping off point for gamers looking to get into the RPG gaming scene. So in the end, Beyond Oasis didn't change the gaming world by no stretch of the imagination, but has left a lasting impression even to this very day. One thing I will say that IGN did get right with their review is that they said it's reminiscent of The Secret of Mana, which its gameplay actually is, in my opinion, but I feel for all intents and purposes, I still lean towards The Legend of Zelda more. Still, 9.5 out of 10 for Gone Home, IGN? The plot of Beyond Oasis is pretty standard fare for its time. Once upon a time, a good, ultimate powerful wizard known as the Gold Armlet defeated the ultimate evil wizard known as the Silver Armlet. Both armlets are MacGuffins, with the Silver Armlet being able to draw upon the powers of chaos and destruction, and the gold being able to conjure spirits. Both end up clapping each other in a final showdown, and the armlets are supposedly lost to the annals of history. Prince Ali,
Prince Ali, fabulous he, Ali Ababa.
finds the gold armlet and is instructed to use it to stop the silver armlet, which has subsequently resurfaced as well. It's all pretty standard stuff, really, but what makes the game interesting are the 4 spirits that Ali is able to summon with the golden armlet. There's Dido, a fairy water spirit.
Goat! The goat!
And although you get her first, she's probably the most useful. Ifrit, the fire spirit, Shade, a living shadow, and Bao from the Little Shop of Horrors.
I'm just a mean green mother from outer space, and I'm bad. Outer space.
I will go deeper into the 4 spirits in the gameplay. I will go deeper into the 4 spirits in the gameplay section, as they will definitely deserve more time dedicated to them. For now, all I want to say about them is that they are the breakout stars of this game. Apparently, when the gold armlet was lost, each spirit was locked away in their own individual temples. Retrieving each spirit and unlocking the gold armlet's full potential makes up most of the core plot of the game, along with jumping through the different hoops that the silver armlet sets before you. Without spoiling the game, as I highly suggest you, dear viewer, play Beyond Oasis for yourself, I will say that your main antagonist is the silver armlet, who periodically likes to show up and screw with you from time to time. But if you're expecting a long drawn out story, rich with lore and depth, then this isn't the game for you.
Look, go away. Read some books.
There are hints of a deeper story, like the cryptic way Ali's father, the king, speaks to him after Ali finds the golden armlet, along with Ali's little sister, who sort of acts like she's cognitive of the dangers that await. Yet for what Beyond Oasis is, none of these things are ever completely fleshed out. That's not to say the game doesn't come to somewhat of a gratifying conclusion, as other plot lines do get introduced and come to a head by the end of it. Nothing ever really goes in depth. None of the plots or anything ever go too deep. You don't explore each person's wants or reasons behind why they do what they do in this game, but each plot that is introduced does have a definitive end. They have a beginning and they have an end, and you learn everything you need to know by the end of the game. And I do feel like, for what this game is, that's okay. I like it. I do. At the end of the day, Beyond Oasis is the story of a prince who likes to moonlight as a treasure hunter. It's pretty clear that it's a hobby for him in the beginning, until he F's around and finds out. Finding the gold armlet makes him the chosen one. The man on the wall, as it's said.
Get down, boy. Get down. What
The last defense to the ever-growing power of the silver armlet, who, I might add, if Ali doesn't stop, will plunge the world of Oasis into darkness. And I don't think it's the world of Oasis. I think Oasis is just the kingdom. I don't know what the world is called. Maybe the world is called Thor. Maybe they switched it around and they just never mention it. Who knows? Before I move on to the last section, which will be the gameplay, I first wanted to talk about the founder of the developer company Ancient, Yuzo Koshiro, who was born December 1967. And I gotta say, when I first started this review, I had no intention of talking about him. Not because I didn't care to, but mainly out of ignorance on my part. Now, some of you smart viewers in the audience, or the old heads, might know who he is, but I didn't. So congratulations.
Check out the big brain on Brad.
Regardless, I stumbled upon a person who I feel has had an illustrious career as a video game composer, on top of founding the developer company Ancient with his sister Anyo. But seriously, Yuzo was a child prodigy from the age of 3, as that was the age his mother, who was a pianist, taught Yuzo how to play, and by age 5 he had practically mastered it. By the 80s, while still in high school, he was already composing his own cover music for arcade games from developers like Namco and Konami and Sega. These were just covers, however, but he was officially hired by them. When I think about what I was doing in high school, he was obviously spending his time more constructively. That's all I'm saying. Yuzo was working on a different kind of Konami code than I was, if you catch my drift. Using the outdated PC8801 FM synthesis sound chip, Yuzo would produce the soundtrack for the Streets of Rage and Dragon Slayer, with the latter being regarded as one of the most influential RPG soundtracks in gaming. And he did it with outdated hardware. From 1988 to 1990, Yuzo would do freelance work, until founding Ancient in 1990. From there, he would go on to compose music and help develop games such as Sonic the Hedgehog. And our reason for this review, Beyond Oasis, and what's truly fascinating, is how he used the Relic software of the PC-88 while creating his own programming language for the Streets of Rage. That's games 1 and 2. Then flipped the script for Streets of Rage 3 by creating a new composition method called Automated Composing System. And the more I talk about this, the more I realize how much better at life this guy was at age 5 than I am at the age I'm at. Psych! Y'all thought I was gonna give you my age, didn't you? Yuzo Koshiro has been widely considered one of, if not the most influential composer in video games. His music has stood the test of time, as he was even called back to compose for the Streets of Rage 4, meaning that we are still hearing his work to this very day. Not just from his work on his retro games, but Streets of Rage 4, but Streets of Rage 4 was a recent 2020 release. So yes, we in the modern era are even getting to hear his work, which is no small feat. So thank you, Mr. Koshiro, for at least bringing us something good in 2020. To be fair, IGN was probably more correct in saying that Beyond Oasis's gameplay feels a lot more like The Secret of Mana than I am in saying it feels more like A Link to the Past. The combat is not a linear turn-based format, but more of up to interpretation and free range. That's where I leave the comparison though, as it focuses heavy on exploration, and it makes it feel more like, to me, the younger cousin of the Zelda games. Where it falls down is the controlling, and combat isn't as tight as, say, A Link to the Past. I mean, the platforming had me about to lose my freaking religion.
Wake up and get yourself to church, yeah.
On several occasions. There are these moving platforms that made me want to put my fist through the monitor, and the combat can get even worse at times. It felt like unless I had a sword equipped, there was no chance, and I mean no chance, I was going to hit any of the Vipers. Yet despite all this, Beyond Oasis has a certain charm that's all its own. Ali has combat moves that are specific button combos that eases the combat since his default weapon is a knife, but other types of weapons can be acquired. Swords, bombs, crossbows are all the base types of weaponry that can be found or dropped by fallen enemies, not to mention the different variation types of these base 3, like steel weaponry for instance. The drawback is that the player must choose wisely when to use said weapons, as they do have a limited amount of uses before breaking and or running out of ammo. There are unbreakable versions of the swords for instance, but those are hidden within the world map, as Beyond Oasis encourages exploration. It's important that the players remember unattainable chests in dungeons, as you can always return later to retrieve them once Ali has the capability to do so.
Pikachu taking notes.
Item management is key to Beyond Oasis. Not just the weapons, but with foods as well. There are 3 types of food items. One type restores health, the other SP or spirit power, and the third type restores both. Also, there are collectibles that allow you to instant summon the Gold Armlet Spirit Guardians without the proper prerequisites. Golly, I'm struggling to. And gems that, as far as I can tell, are more for bragging rights than function. Now, when I say that there are prerequisites to summoning the Spirit Guardians, I mean that each are tied into a type of element, save for Shade, really. Before worrying about all that, however, Ali must first obtain each spirit by braving a perilous dungeon, defeating the enemies within while solving puzzles that are ever increasing in difficulty. And that is just another reason I hearken Beyond Oasis to Zelda. Except Zelda games are still more challenging, as in Beyond Oasis you won't need to find a map or compass. The puzzles and enemies can be a challenge still. And before Ali can claim the spirit, there will be a dungeon boss. Each boss represents their own brand of chicanery, except for the first temple, because I guess they are actually temples and not dungeons technically, so yeah.
Ooh, yeah,
Except for the first temple, Ali will have a spirit best suited to help him lay smackdown on said boss. And speaking of spirits, there are 4, and each has their own unique abilities and uses. Dido, the water fairy, who can only be summoned by using the gold armlet on a water source. In my opinion, she's the best. She's not heavily combat related, but she's the only spirit that can give those sweet, sweet heals. Her bubbles stun enemies, and in a pinch, she can turn into a water cyclone, which will damage foes. Then there's Ifrit, a fire spirit, and he's the bruiser. Everything about Ifrit is combat, from his fire breath to his fire dash, and if things are looking dire, Ifrit will even go nuclear, exploding into a torrent of hellish fury. I highly recommend him against zombies, as he one-shots them. I suppose this goes without saying, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Ifrit can only be summoned from a source of fire. Shade is one of those interesting utility spirits whose summons isn't so much tied into an element, but more of a reflection, which I suppose if you wanted to go deep with it, Shade is a manifestation of Ali's shadow self. Speaking of which, I did an essay video on The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time and the conflict between Link and Dark Link. I'll put a card for that up here, and I feel, and mind you, it's just my opinion, but I feel like y'all should check it out.
do it.
Shade is versatile in the sense where he's probably the only spirit whose attack is pretty much useless, as it doubles as a type of grappling hook. Certain areas will be out of reach, and Shade with the proper indicator will stretch out and grapple Ali across the crevasse. He also can create a mirror image that is useful for solving puzzles, as this doppelganger cannot be harmed, but still activate floor switches. Perhaps what makes Shade rival Dido, however, in their usefulness, is while active, Shade is basically Ali's living shadow. Shade turns Ali into a displacer beast. And will even tank some of the damage Ali receives in combat, and from fall damage. Still, I'd rather use Dido, but Shade, while active, uses less SP over time, unless he's tanking damage, of course. Lastly, there's Bao, the plant, whose markers for activation look like little Venus flytraps. Bao is a funny spirit to use, since if the player can master Bao, then he's extremely useful. Bao can help solve puzzles by eating through green-colored gates only. He can stun multiple enemies by exploding into spore clouds, and his bite attack is pretty vicious to said enemies. So in a strange way, Bao is the most versatile, and he can solve puzzles that only he can, attack like a freak, and stun like Dido. His drawback is that since he's a terrain-based spirit and an alien from outer space, he's stationary like a plant-based life form, which means one of his abilities is strictly dedicated to burrowing underground and moving to Ali's position when called, which is why I said he's a bit difficult to master. Those are the 4 guardian spirits, and other than using them when indicated to, like solving puzzles and such, eventually it's up to the player's discretion on which one to use the most. But I highly suggest exploring the map and trying to retrieve or retread old ground to solve puzzles that were once unsolvable. As a small tip from me, the first temple where Dido is located has a neat little exploit that'll let Ali stock up on stakes for HP. Since each area is revisitable without limit, when Ali first goes into the water temple, he'll get a key, go into the next room, and then you must be ready to dodge to either side, as there are enemies with crossbows. Kill them, and a chest with a stake will appear. Get the stake, exit the temple, and repeat. The stakes will always reappear after killing the 2 crossbowmen. But be warned, most enemies respawn when Ali leaves a room. Should Ali leave the entire temple respawns and all progress is lost. Another useful thing that you have is a mini map that you can pull up with whatever button you assign it to at any time, so you're always aware of where your location is in the world of Oasis. And it will always have an indicator of where you need to go, so that's pretty handy, since it doesn't really leave you without knowing where to go. The game kind of holds your hand in that sense, but it doesn't hold your hand on how to get there. So as the challenges and the destinations get further away, it gets a little bit more challenging figuring out how to get there. It's nothing too bad, but there are times where you can get lost. And then there's leveling up. You don't level up in this game the same way that you do in pretty much any other RPG I've ever seen. Every now and then, an enemy will just drop a giant heart on the ground and you just pick it up, and that levels you up. It increases all your stats. You just have to be ready to get them, because it won't stay there. Items are not indefinite. They will vanish after a period of time. So I lost a few hearts at times because they would drop and then I'd be covered and surrounded by enemies and just couldn't get to it. And it's a bummer. So you can, I don't know how high you can level up, but it feels like you can level up indefinitely if you just run around and mine hearts. The gameplay is pretty wonky. It controls pretty outlandishly at times. There's a crouch button, and the crouch button and the jump button just happen to be the same button. So when I was talking about those platforms earlier, that's why that's so tough, because you'll you'll try to jump, but if you hold that button too long, you'll crouch and it throws your jump completely off. And a nanosecond of those platform jumps. I won't go any much further into it. You'll see. Give the game a try, and I hope you enjoy it. Well, that's it for my R&R of Beyond Oasis, and I highly recommend you try it out for yourself. It's not a particularly long game, as I beat it in about 6 hours. However, I can't marathon games since I have work and family and things like that. Real life kind of gets in my way sometimes. But for a good playthrough, I probably could have cut that time in half. New players it may take a little longer for, since all the secrets and knowledge isn't available, but I still recommend it. With that, I want to thank y'all for stopping by. I'm truly humbled that you've taken time out of your day to be here. Don't forget to like and share and subscribe. If it tickles your fancy, go ahead and sign my guest book. But I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Y'all mean so much to me, and I love y'all so much. It sounds really weird when I say it like that, but you know what I mean. I mean it with the bottom of my heart. Y'all come back now. Stay gold. Hello everyone, I'm Lord Pog and welcome to Lord Pog Gaming. So I have a confession to make. I've sort of cheated with today's R&R. R&R is my shorthand for retro review, but you're more than welcome to rest and relax here as well. As stated before in my previous R&R on Beyond Oasis, which you should totally check out.
Your daisy if you do.
I'm currently doing a series of R&Rs based on my personal 4 favorite Sega Genesis RPGs. As stated before, the Super Nintendo in the 90s had top-notch RPGs like Final Fantasy VI, or you could call it 3. Both answers are valid in their own right. Earthbound, A Link to the Past, and not to mention my personal favorite, Mario RPG. Which is why the RPG I'm going to talk about in this video is so special to me. And why it's a cheat. Because when you do a 4 video series, it's kind of customary to save your favorite and the one you think is best for last. But I just couldn't contain myself. I've been so blessed by y'all so much with the growth of my channel. All the support, suggestions, and criticisms. Mind you, I don't mind being criticized as long as it's constructive. I take criticism kind of like everybody should, right? I feel like it should help you reflect and inward think, as long as it's constructive. When it's deconstructive, you should let it solidify yourself and help you to build up. It's like breaking bones so they can become stronger, right? But I digress. Because of the growth of this channel, I just had to share what is probably my favorite RPG on the Sega ever. In fact, it is. There's no probably about it. I'm just so excited to get to gush over it with y'all, and I mean this with all my heart and soul when I say you honor me with your presence here. Okay? I'll stop being mushy now. So sorry. Today we're going to talk about the Shining Force, the legacy of great intention. But before we get into that, I gotta do the thing first. I know, and trust me, I always feel a little cringy when I'm doing it, so, bear with me. But if you like what I do here, and you're new to the channel or returning, you'd honor me by leaving a like on the video. And if I got you feeling a type of way, feel free to share and subscribe also. Plus, sign my guest book while you're here. My guest book is what I call my comment section, and ring my bell to be notified of when I release new content. I do have a variety of stuff, so even if you don't like this, maybe you'll find something you do like on my channel. I don't know. Give it a shot. I don't know. Do you know? I don't know. Alright. I won't harp on it anymore.
What? I don't like to harp on a subject.
I don't care. It comes with me, never have. That's why they call me gregarious.
Let's get started with this video. It is now my esteemed pleasure to share my love of Shining Force, the legacy of great intention. Shining Force, the legacy of great intention was first released in 1992 for the Sega Genesis. For those of you in the audience who are familiar with the Fire Emblem series, it might feel a bit more akin to that than anything else, save for the lead developer Hiroyuki Takahashi saying, "The tempo of that title was so bad that it wasn't something I even wanted to play." Damn! The Fire Emblem game he was talking about was Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, which was the first installment of the Fire Emblem series, first released in 1990. In fact, Shining Force is actually the second installment of its series, with the first being the successful Shining in the Darkness. However, Shining in the Darkness is a radically different styled game. While Shining Force is a tactical RPG, Shining in the Darkness is a first-person dungeon crawl. Think Eye of the Beholder, a Dungeons & Dragons game released in 1991 for the MS-DOS. Developers Climax Entertainment and subsequently Hiroyuki Takahashi, I'm sorry y'all, I am gonna butcher these names, wanted to make a game that was heavily inspired by Dragon Quest, a game that was published in 1986 by Enix before becoming Square Enix, and was known overseas as Dragon Warrior until 2005. Why the change? Don't know. We're not here for that. Takahashi said that he wanted to make a game like Dragon Quest, but make the battles fun, while also drawing inspiration from a game called Silver Ghost. And not to get off on a tangent,
Here we go again.
but Silver Ghost was a game released in 1988 for the NEC PC 8801. And in my last video, I talked about composer Yuzo Koshiro, who used the PC 8801's dated sound chip to achieve some of his most iconic scores in gaming. And at the time, he did this with hardware that was considered dated. So Silver Ghost releasing in 1988 sort of puts that into perspective.
It really puts perspective on things, though, doesn't it?
Not too much. There's
Well,
too much
yeah,
fucking
that's-
perspective now.
Shining Force would be well received with Game Informer, yes, that Game Informer, giving it an 8 out of 10. Sega Pro, which was Sega's answer to Nintendo Power, gave it a 93%. A British gaming magazine called Mega gave it a 92%. An Australian magazine, Megazone, gave it a 90%. And a French gaming magazine called Megaforce gave the game a whopping 95%. So not too shabby if I do say so myself. And before I close out this section, let me say this. I first discovered this game on Sega Channel, and from the moment I first began playing it, I was instantly smitten. Although I've mentioned that what is probably far superior games in story and gameplay, it's still ranked up there in my top 2 favorite RPGs of all time, with the first being the aforementioned Mario RPG. So you have to forgive me if I, at times, sound a little giddy while talking about it, as there's tons of history with me and the Shining Force. The story of Shining Force, The Legacy of Great Intention, is that once upon a time, and I'm not kidding, as this game sort of makes you feel like you're playing out a fairy tale. So once upon a time, this evil being known as Dark Dragon was sealed away by the ancients. And what is often the case in stories like this is that eventually people grew complacent during times of peace, which allows the main villain Dark Soul, who also shows up in Shining in the Darkness connecting the 2 games, to corrupt the kingdom of Runefrost and begin to use its armies to try and unlock the Shining Path. Should Dark Soul succeed, he will unleash Dark Dragon once more and plunge the world into darkness. It's all pretty standard fare, as you the player controls the main character Max, but if you don't like that name, you have the option of renaming him at the start. So for me personally, I've never played as Max. I've always been called Pog, which, if I may go off the rails again, I'm going off the rails on a crazy trail. My name isn't based off of a Twitch phrase.
Oh, Jesus, God, no.
It actually comes from an old cap game in the 90s, where you would try to flip over these round caps to show the art on one side. If you do, you win that cap, and if you have the most caps in the end, you win. I was good at it, and it just stuck with me. I mean, I'm not even gonna lie. I one time built a clubhouse just to host these Pog tournaments because we had hardcore rules. You win those caps, you win the Pogs as they were called. You kept those Pogs. Anyways, that's enough of my old man recollections.
Boo this man!
Along the way of trying to stop Dark Soul, you'll gather other adventurers to your cause. There are 29 heroes that you can recruit, with 11 of them being hidden. So if you're not paying attention, you may miss them completely, and there's no way to go back. We'll get more into this in the gameplay section.
Hold your horses.
But for now, just remember that not everybody is a guaranteed member, and 4 out of those 11 are my personal favorites. Max is a human being trained by Lord Varios, a centaur and knight for the kingdom of Guardiana, who watch over one of the gates of the ancients. Kain, a major villain of the game, and general of Runefrost's army, comes in and wrecks Guardiana. After this, Nova, a hybrid of what looks like the astrological symbol for a Capricorn, a humanoid goat fish man, steps forward and offers to mentor Max in the ways of being a general, so that Max may become the leader of the Shining Force and stone cold stun Dark Soul once and for all. I'm currently fighting the urge to explain the story in its entirety to all of you beautiful golden wonders, but I would be doing y'all an injustice if I did. Currently, Shining Force is available on Steam for 99 cents, and I would be amiss not to beseech you to play it. I've done so many times over myself, and even to this day I keep coming back to it. It's dated, so the plot doesn't rival of that of even Final Fantasy's Mystic Quest.
How dare you!
Well, not in a sense anyways. See, the story can fall kind of flat at times, For instance, you go through this cave to get to the Orb of Light, which you're led to believe might be a MacGuffin. Yet when you get it and use it, there's a short dialogue, and that's about it. However, the game more than makes up for this by, instead of having long drawn-out segments, the story instead plays itself out using multiple NPCs. So even when you're feeling a little like the Orb of Light scenario was anticlimactic, the NPC Atrant explains how profound what just happened really is. So even though the way the story plays itself out at times seems a little dated, there's a type of charm in how Shining Force makes important characters feel important. Every one of the heroes who join your party has a personality to an extent, but the game gives you the option of getting to know them. Most importantly, as you battle alongside your chosen group, you'll by proxy develop a type of kinship with them. That makes it a story all your own. It makes it feel more personal and more catered to you and your choices and decisions. Max must find the Sword of Light and the Sword of Darkness, so he may merge them, creating the Chaos Breaker. And if that ain't just the beat-all for a sword's name, I don't know what is. Only then will you be able to stop Dark Soul and hold Dark Dragon at bay. While in town, Shining Force plays like your typical RPG. Max is guided around from an overhead view. You'll go to shops and buy weapons and potions, talk to NPCs, and look at every bookshelf. Seriously, look at every bookshelf. A lot of thought was put into them, and in the days of pre-Elder Scrolls, no two shelves have the same books. Or so I've found anyways. The overworld is a different story. Most of the time it's pretty linear. Instead of the vast open world space of, say, like Final Fantasy games, most of the open world time is dedicated to Shining Force's tactical battle system. Now, AI has come a long way, as in just 2 years Elder Scrolls Arena would be released. Shining Force, the Legacy of Great Intentions AI, would be limited by comparison. A better example of this, of smart enemy AI, would be Final Fantasy Tactics, for instance. Yet, for its time, Shining Force didn't feel limited, but more like battle chess on crack.
Peanut butter and crack.
The enemies will mostly follow a set pattern of movement, which at first makes it seem easy to predict how best to strategize when moving your forces. This is true mostly. But I would still advise to proceed with caution, since the AI is programmed to throw you for a loop. Much in the same way as chess, every one of your troops are expendable, and unlike Fire Emblem, they can be resurrected by a priest. Also, a priest is where you go to save your game, cure curses, wow, say that 5 times fast, cure curses, and promote your heroes. More on the priest later though. Anyway, each battle feels like chess. It's turn-based, and you'll move each character individually. Some are warriors, some are healers, some are mages, and then some are Gong.
Goat! The goat!
Gong is one of the characters that can be missed, so don't do that. He's a healer by nature, but I kid you not, if you put even an ounce of effort into leveling him up through combat, you'll have this awesome healer who will punch the enemy in the face like Bruce Lee. You can find Gong when you enter your first battle. When it's Max's turn to move him towards the exit of the battle, which is behind you. Nova will ask if you want to exit the fight. Say yes, then move to the little red house on the side of the place you're fighting at. You'll find Gong there.
What can I say except you're welcome?
The only way to truly lose a battle is if Max is killed, which is an automatic defeat. So much like chess, if you lose the king, you've lost the whole battle. So if you lose every single unit, but Max is still kicking, then you haven't lost. So I suggest having at least one Angel Wing in Max's items just in case. And or he can do a magic called Egress, which will warp him back. But there you have it. Now, since the Chaos Breaker can only be wielded by Max, you'll have to find a perfect balance between putting him into battles, as you can only gain XP through combat, or magic use like magic attacks or healing. You can also gain XP by using an item on another ally, say a healing herb or something. But keeping him from just getting choke slammed.
Add a little exclamation point to this. Nice choke.
By an enemy who hits harder than his defense is a real tough thing to do in this game. One way of gauging the battlefield is by deselecting the character whose move it is by pressing the cancellation button. This will bring up a set of menu options and allow you to free roam over the battlefield. If you select the map, you'll then see how many enemies there are as indicated by red dots. If you hover, that's the word. If you hover over an enemy, you can select them and bring up their stats, which will let you gauge who's strong against who and such. This seems like I'm giving you an edge, but there's some surprises still to be had that I'm leaving out, because I want you to play this game. All I'm doing is giving y'all the basic controls that aren't exactly obvious from the start. And one last thing, if after gaining victory and you're not just instantly whisked away and are allowed to roam the battlefield, look for an unopened chest or unopened chests, as they will 9 times out of 10 have items and weapons better than anything you'll find in the shops. Interacting with items and people in cities is a pretty tedious ordeal, even for its time, but was pretty standard fare for many of the games at that time. A set of options will appear and you can either talk, search, use magic, or mess with your items. Now let's talk about items. Each character has only 4 slots to hold items, and since Max is the only one on free mode who can pick up items from chests, it's a good idea to always have at least one slot open, since if all 4 slots are full, he won't take items from said chests. It's annoying, I know, but you can always go into your items and freely transfer items from one character to another to better free up space. Unless you're in battle. Then to transfer an item from one character to another, they must be adjacent. One neat thing, however, is to equip an item in battle. That is a free action and will not count against your movement or attacks. Only 12 heroes can go into a fight at one time.
You shall be the Fellowship of the Ring,
with Max counting as the 12th. So evenly leveling everyone up can be a challenge too, but I find it best to just find a rhythm and stick with it. You'll probably find a few heroes from the beginning, cough cough, gong, that you'll be pretty invested in, while either discovering others or gaining others through the story that you'll want to swap in. Shining Force has so much replayability from that one aspect alone, since there's a lot of different combinations and squads you can put together and play through to see what kind of squads there are. To save, as said before, you'll need to go to the priest. He'll save your game, resurrect any fallen heroes, plus there's remove curse, which the only curse I ever came upon he couldn't remove. And then there's promotion. Those who are familiar with 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons, or 3.5, will understand this as a prestige class. See, once a character reaches a certain level in the game, the priest can promote them to a new class, which to my understanding makes them stronger. Okay, so I'm gonna go off on something here.
freaking idiot.
But I've never actually played a run-through without promoting my characters. It feels like it's optional not to do so, but if I'm being honest, the first time I played Shining Force, promotion seemed like such a neat little thing that I just have never thought to not do it. Which is funny because in a way it also feels like a soft reset of the character, while somehow buffing them at the same time. If anyone that's played this before has gone without promoting, well, let me know when you sign my guest book. I'd be fascinated to actually know how that works. If you haven't figured out by now, I love this game. From the animations to the story and gameplay, even the score is amazing. I mean, Sega has always had some bangers, but the first time I heard that intro, I felt goosebumps. Even now it transports me to my childhood. The intro music, the little Simone reading the fairy tale and asking for my help. It just felt so magical. So before I close this section out, as I still have one final section I'd like to talk about. I know, but stick with me as I feel it's what really makes this game so special. Before we get into that though, let me talk about one particular enemy who will be a nasty thorn in your side. Nasty thorn. The witch Michaela, out of all the bosses you're going to fight, she's the one who may cause you to rage quit the most, and or curse the developers for being born. Was that too much? Well, anyways, she sucks. My advice is this: don't wait to search the chests on the battle when you fight her. Make sure Max is a high enough level so he can tank some damage. Make sure you have not used any of your shower cures. What am I even saying? Make sure you haven't used any of your shower cures, and make sure he eats all the breads of life that you find. And have at least some flying characters who can flank, since she'll be unflankable otherwise. If it sounds like I'm being vague, I'm not. There's really no other way to handle this. Michaela has unlimited magic and heals every turn. Not her turn, mind you, but every turn. Yes, it's exactly what you're thinking. And she's got a magic attack that can and will hit a filthy amount of your characters at once. It's a hard fight, so find the sword in the chest, get it to max, and pray you can survive attacking her. Good luck. Also, I want to give a special shout out to Elliot. He's on the enemy side, but you'll just have to play the game to see why I think so much of him. You may have noticed that a few times I've referred to this game by its full name, Shining Force: The Legacy of Great Intention. There's a specific reason for that, as over time whenever I've heard this game spoken of, the Legacy of Great Intention is often left out, with most people only calling it The Shining Force. And to be fair, calling it Shining Force: The Legacy of Great Intention is a mouthful. As a kid, I always just called it The Shining Force, since I'm not even sure that the full name had registered in my brain yet. As a child, I was a bit rough and tumble, kind of a knucklehead as they say. Any and all perceived intelligence I may have now is a result of years of practice. It wouldn't be until I reached adulthood that the name The Legacy of Great Intention would register inside my thick skull, and even more so until doing this review. Now I wonder, just what the heck is the Great Intention that they are even speaking of? In fact, had I not decided to ponder this, I probably would have gotten this video out sooner, and it might be a whole lot shorter. Yet I think I've come to a conclusion, maybe not the right one, but as someone who's played this over a dozen times, it's the right conclusion for me, and here I am finally releasing the video.
Look, I made you some content, diving into your favorite open wide.
The definition of intention reads, a thing intended, an aim, or a plan. It also has a medical definition saying the healing process of a wound. The definition of something intended is, nah, I'm joking. We have more than what we need with just the first two.
Got him!
I'm just a troll sometimes. Now back on track. So now that we understand what intention means, how does it apply to the game and its overarching story? Well, the easiest answer would be the Shining Force's intention is to stop Dark Soul from resurrecting Dark Dragon. But again, I feel it runs deeper than that. For instance, I made this video with the intention of gaining subscribers. That doesn't mean I will, but seriously.
Do it.
Regardless, my reason for the video runs deeper than that, than just gaining subscribers, I mean. In the end, I wanted to share my love for Shining Force, the legacy of great intention, with the world, or at least my small corner of it here on YouTube, and share it with y'all who have taken time out of your schedules to be here with me, and I can never repay you enough for it. Keeping that in mind, just because I said what the Shining Force's intentions are doesn't mean that they'll succeed. That's not really foreshadowing, it's just that you'd really have to play the game to see what I mean. Then maybe come back and hear this section one more time, since it's too easy to say that the ultimate intention is to stop Dark Dragon's resurrection, and since Hiroyuki Takahashi made it clear that he didn't just want to make a clone of Fire Emblem, instead he wanted to make a game that could stand on its own 2 feet. I find it hard that at the end of the day, even the name, like the Legacy of Great Intention, wasn't something he put some thought into. Every character, Max, and I'm sorry, I keep wanting to call him Pog, I really do, and I know that's gotta be getting old. I just really wanted to call him Pog this whole time, but for the sake of consistency and the way the game was written, I thought, it would ease my burden if I did call him Pog, but it's just getting hard to call him Max, but I'll continue to call him Max, but you can understand what I'm saying here, right?
Okay, I stopped listening like halfway through that.
Every character Max meets who joins him on his quest has their own reason for doing so, whether it's because they were instructed to, or they're doing it for revenge, or have been inspired to take up the fight in some way. Every character has some kind of intended purpose for themselves, and what they want the ultimate outcome to be, which at the end of the day is keeping Dark Soul from unleashing Dark Dragon upon the world, and healing some of the wounds that Dark Soul has left in his wake, for he screws over a lot of people in this game. But no matter their reason, all roads will lead to Rome, as they say. All except Max, that is. See, Max is a human being trained by the leader of the Knights of Guardiana, Lord Varios, who, as stated before, is a centaur. Every centaur Max meets and joins him is a knight. From Ken to Vankar, they are all knights. In fact, every centaur NPC in the game is a knight. Even the Knights of Runefaust are centaurs, making it relevant that Varios has chosen Max as his pupil instead of another centaur, who I might add, notice this. There's definitely a resentment that the centaurs show Max at the beginning of the game, seeing as it a waste of Lord Varios' time to train Max, yet Varios never regrets his decision, going as far as to say Max is the chosen one without actually just saying that out loud. Max's story is naturally going to be the most fleshed out, and as we the players get to experience every victory, every defeat, and suffer every loss as Max does, it goes without saying that to continue on, I would ruin the game entirely. Things are going to happen to Max along the way that changes his intention from everyone else's. From the start, his intention is to prove himself. Then it's to avenge allies he will lose along the way. Soon his intent is to become worthy of the Shining Force, not only avenging those allies' lost, but setting right what Dark Soul has undone,
and heal the wounds of the land. Yes, his intention all the while will still align with stopping Dark Soul and keeping Dark Dragon at bay. But it's his legacy of great intention we witness as this fairy tale progresses, where in the end his intention will take it just one step further, which is why it pains me to stop here. Since in order for me to truly relate what it is that I mean, I will have to tell you how the whole game plays out. And it's my ardent wish that you, dear viewer, go and play this simple tale. Now, while it may come across as simple, it's amazingly well thought out and lovingly crafted. And if, when you do, come back here and tell me if you can see what Max, Hog, or whomever you choose to be, come and tell me what you saw. Sit a spell with me, won't you? Tell me about the heroes you chose to fight alongside, and who your favorites were. What squads you created and the different combinations you had. What were some of your strategies? And how did some of these events make you feel? Please, I'd love to hear about your legacy of great intention. I want to thank you for sticking around this long if you have. This video ran longer than I expected, but like I said, Shining Force The Legacy of Great Intention is a game near and dear to my heart, and I hope that I was able to properly relate it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Sign my guest book, ring my bell, and most of all, I want y'all to know that although we have never met each other, we have different beliefs, we may have different beliefs, opinions, philosophies in life, and etc. When we're here together, gathered round because of our mutual love for games and gaming in general, that is something we share beyond race, gender, politics, and all those other superficial things that society seems to try and yoke us with. We are equal here, because this is something we can all share. And from my heart and soul, I want you to know I love you. Thank you so much for helping this guy, who doesn't feel like he's really good at much most of the time, feel like he's good at this. Or at least getting better. Y'all come back now. Stay golden. Hello everyone, I hope all of you Golden Wonders out there are doing good. Welcome to Lord Pog Gaming, and I'm your humble host, Lord Pog. You truly honor me with your presence, and before we get started, first let me do the thing here. If I got you feeling a type of way, then you'd honor me by liking and sharing the video. If you're new to my little corner of YouTube, then feel free to subscribe.
Your daisy if you do.
If and it tickle your fancy, of course. You can't imagine how much it does for me when y'all do this. It just means the world. Plus, don't forget to sign my guest book, as that's what I call my comment section, and ring my bell for notifications. Okay, that's enough of my shameless plugs. I'm not gonna harp on it, as that's not my style.
Well, I don't like to harp on a subject,
I don't
but
care. It comes with me, never have. That's why they call me gregarious.
As promised to those of you who have been keeping up with my retro game reviews, or my R&Rs as I call them, normally R&R stands for rest and relaxation, but I mean it to stand for retro reviews. However, you're more than welcome to sit a spell,
Take a load off, Benny.
and rest and relax here. I've been doing this 4-part series of R&Rs on what I feel are the 4 best RPGs ever released on the Sega Genesis. They aren't in any particular order, like from least to greatest, as I've already reviewed my all-time favorite, Shining Force: The Legacy of Great Intention, which I'll leave a card for here if any of you Golden Wonders out there want to check it out. Plus, I've done Beyond Oasis, which I'll leave a card for here. And so, I've already reviewed 2 out of the 4 games that I plan on reviewing. And to be honest, I've gotten sidetracked and done some other videos before getting to this one that I'm about to do, which can be found on my channel, so feel free to browse around if you like. Or you don't have to if you don't want to. But seriously,
Do it.
folks who've been keeping up with this particular R&R series have been waiting for a hot minute, and I'm sorry it took so long, but finally it's time to review an all-time fan favorite, Landstalker: The Treasures of King Knoll.
I made you some content. Diving into your favorite open wide.
Which I know a lot of you had to see coming, as in some of the comments on my previous R&Rs, Landstalker was mentioned as one of the best Sega RPGs. I admittedly had to downplay this, of course, in my response, because I didn't want to give anything away. But just so you all know, to everyone out there, yes, it's one of my favorites also, and I've always planned on Landstalker being on this list. So without further ado, let's get on with the show. First released in Japan in 1992, then everywhere else in 1993, Landstalker: The Treasures of King Knoll was developed by Climax Entertainment, a small company who by 96 had a staff you could count on your fingers and toes. Yet this is the second game they were involved with on this list, as they were also responsible for developing Shining Force. Not to mention Shining Force's predecessor, Shining in the Darkness, along with Lady Stalker, Dark Savior, and Time Stalkers, each with their own varying degrees of success and failures. But aside from Shining in the Darkness and Shining Force, Landstalker perhaps was Climax Entertainment's biggest success, and for good reason, which we'll get into soon enough. Sadly though, in 2015, Climax would close its doors for good without so much as a whimper. Now I've looked into why their closure was so low-key, but unfortunately I haven't found anything other than financial issues being their reason for closing. If any of you Golden Wonders out there know why it wasn't publicized more, then let me know in the guest book, as I am genuinely curious.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Despite their eventual closure, Climax Entertainment developed a truly special game in Landstalker, which would be published by Sega for the Genesis. The magazine Game Fan, a publication started in 1992 by Tim Lindquist, Greg Off, George Weissing, and David Halvorson, perhaps, gave Landstalker a perfect 10 out of 10, saying at the time if it were an American version that they had played, they would have given it Game of the Year. So not too shabby if I do say so myself. Next Generation, a magazine geared more towards focusing on the industry of gaming rather than focusing on the games as single entities, claimed that Landstalker was so popular in Japan that folks there were buying the Mega Drive system just to play it. And that ain't no small feat, really. So needless to say, Climax had lightning in a bottle.
I got that, dog. Lightning in a bottle. Blib.
With Landstalker. The story of Landstalker: The Treasures of King Knoll was ahead of its time narratively and mechanically. the player is first introduced to an elf boy named Nigel. Granted, I'm not entirely sure he's a boy, but I know he's definitely young. Despite Nigel's age, he's an accomplished treasure hunter, as the game literally begins at the tail end of one of Nigel's hunts. This serves to show the player how competent Nigel is at what he does.
I'm the best there is at what I do, but what I do isn't very nice.
While showcasing some of the platforming the player has to look forward to. We'll get more into the platforming in the gameplay section, but for now, put a pin in it to come back to later.
Hold your horses.
After finishing up the aforementioned treasure hunt in the Gypta ruins, Nigel is instantly thrusted into a whole new ordeal while handing over the Gypta statue to a shop owner who hired him. A wood nymph named Friday, who predates Navi from The Legend of Zelda by 6 years, comes flying up begging Nigel for help. I feel I must sidetrack us for a minute here.
Here we go again.
As it's important that I clarify that I love The Legend of Zelda. In fact, the Hero of Time Link from the Ocarina of Time is by far one of my all-time favorite video game heroes ever. So much so that I did a video on this channel talking about how the Hero of Time is probably the epitome of a hero. Card for that here just in case y'all don't mind another shameless plug. So when it seems like I'm taking a jab by saying Friday, a seemingly fey companion who was showcased in Landstalker before Ocarina of Time's Navi, that's not meant to be a shot across the bow for Legend of Zelda. While fairies weren't new to The Legend of Zelda, the mechanic of a fairy companion wouldn't come to fruition until Ocarina of Time as far as The Legend of Zelda is concerned. Meanwhile, Landstalker did it 6 years prior, as stated before, which only shows yet another innovation in Landstalker's narrative, and we haven't even gotten to its game mechanics yet. And now, back to our scheduled program. So Friday is being chased by another treasure hunter named Kayla, and her two monstrous companions, Ink and Wally. You know, Ink and Wally remind me of characters that a 3.5 edition D&D player created using the Savage Species book, with the sole purpose of playing them as bumbling as possible for comic relief. I just thought I'd point that out as well. Nigel agrees to help Friday when he learns that Friday knows the location of the fabled treasure of King Null. So without hesitation of the dangers that lay ahead,
Consequences, consequences, as long as I'm rich.
Nigel spends the last of his gold, or at least a good chunk of it, to fly to Gola Island. The giant bird, which I think is an eagle, is wearing flight goggles also. And it's just little touches like this that makes me love Landstalker. I mean, it just cracks me up the way it looks. Now, I don't want to spoil the game completely, as it's my ardent wish that any of you Golden Wonders out there who haven't played Landstalker will go out and play it for yourselves. It's only 99 cents on Steam, but if that's too pricey,
You serious?
then I still urge you to play it by any means necessary. Landstalker's gameplay was way ahead of its time, but whether or not it was truly the first to implement the three-dimensional platforming style of play it's known for, I can't honestly say. But what I will say is that when I first discovered Landstalker on the Sega Channel,
I'm Chanel. And I'm Channel.
I hadn't personally played anything like it yet. I've heard it called an isometric view, which is also known as an isometric projection. This is where 3D objects are represented on a two-dimensional plane. And yes, it is more nuanced than that, but I'm a knucklehead. So I'm explaining it in the simplest of terms more for me than the audience. Good for all of you aerospace engineers out there who understand the math.
Check out the big brain on Brad.
JK, I love y'all. This isometric view is, however, one of the game's biggest weaknesses as well, as it can be a bit disorienting. Not taking away from the innovation, of course, The said isometric view can make certain areas of the platforming hard to gauge. Now to be fair, I suck at video games. I'm just passionate about the games I love. And there were times while getting the footage for this video that I about lost my religion. There are times that the depth perception can be wonky, and I swear I would jump from one spot to the other, 100% certain that I was dead on, only to realize that the unmoving platform I was jumping to isn't sitting along the wall, which in turn would cause me to miss it on the inside of the wall, plunging me down into some kind of spiked flooring or room full of death mummies, for example. If that sounds like a convoluted explanation, that's because I don't know any better way of explaining it. Basically, in most platforming games, if a platform is running alongside the wall, then the wall acts as a barrier, with the outside edge being the death trap. Landstalker, though, doesn't do that. See, the developers in their infinite wisdom thought it'd be cool to make it where you can fall off the platform on either side. Not that this doesn't have a certain level of realism to it, and I honestly respect its hustle, but because the view is isometric, the depth perception can be misleading, causing one to learn about this mechanic the hard way. Now I know that it sounds like I'm only whining, but you gotta hand it to Climax for pushing the limits of Sega's controls. In the end, this style would become the norm for platforming games, save for the Metroidvania side-scrolling platformers. But even they incorporate these mechanics to a degree at times. I just don't think the Genesis was quite equipped for something of Landstalker's type at the time. Regardless, Landstalker is a critical darling and remembered kindly by its players. Another cool mechanic is the fighting, as Landstalker goes with a real-time fights over the typical turn-based fighting structure often used by RPGs during the time. The Final Fantasy series, that was known for its innovative turn-based combat, has moved away from turn-based combat, adopting the more real-time action strategy combat that Landstalker was already doing. But so did Beyond Oasis and The Legend of Zelda, not to mention The Secret of Mana. Oh yeah, speaking of Final Fantasy, Sweet Baby Inc. Leave Tifa alone. Why do you guys hate beauty so much? Tifa. If I may get sidetracked again, A Link to the Past did a good job at the real-time fighting combat, but to say that Nintendo did it better than Landstalker is like comparing apples and oranges. I can honestly say Landstalker did it better than Beyond Oasis or Secret of Mana, but it's a funny argument comparing it to A Link to the Past, and I'll tell you why. Sure, A Link to the Past has Landstalker technically beat by 1 year when it comes to release dates. There's no evidence that says Landstalker drew any influence from A Link to the Past in using the real-time strategy combat. Their aesthetics are pretty similar, yeah, but if you ask me, Landstalker might have influenced The Legend of Zelda in some ways also, maybe even more so. I'm getting ahead of myself though, so before we even delve into all that, let's just say that when you play A Link to the Past, it's top-down view, making it real-time combat, I won't say easier, but more easy to visualize. So one can't really compare isometric real-time combat to top-down view combat, if that makes any sense, and then argue the case of which is better. Anyways, going back to who drew more inspiration from who, well, Landstalker's main protagonist Nigel is definitely inspired by Link. I would say a lot of characters were inspired by Link in this time. I'd also say the whole style and vibe of Landstalker was meant to be a response to Nintendo's The Legend of Zelda. But I'd also say that Landstalker had a few things that had to have inspired future installments of The Legend of Zelda. We've already talked about Friday being a Fey companion that came before Navi from the Ocarina of Time, but Landstalker also had a mechanic that I believe inspired the Great Deku Tree from the Ocarina of Time.
No way!
So I know this is perhaps a grand assumption, and maybe even a grander statement, but first allow me to explain the order of Zelda games by release dates. The first two installments were released in 1986, then 1987, only 1 year apart from each other. A Link to the Past wouldn't come out until 1991, with the next game, Link's Awakening, releasing in 93 for the Game Boy. In 98, both Link's Awakening for Game Boy Color would drop, but so would also Ocarina of Time for the Nintendo 64. Now, all you Golden Wonders out there might be asking, why is any of that matter? Does Pog even have a point here?
You bet your sweet bippy!
I admit it's not terribly weird that Nintendo made sure to release a Zelda game for every launch of a new system, so the time periods do make some sense up until Ocarina of Time. Nintendo were more than pleased with the success of A Link to the Past, so the idea of releasing another Zelda game on the SNES probably didn't even occur to them, which just means that Nintendo were happy with their results. They were sitting on top of the mountain at this time, so they didn't think that they needed to really give us more Zelda, if that makes any sense. Yet, they didn't even begin to feel the squeeze by Sega. So, if just feeling a slight discomfort as a result meant anything to them, we wouldn't know. The misconception here, though, is that it wasn't Nintendo that would cause Sega to go from being publishers to developers. That wasn't Nintendo's fault. By the time the 64 hit the shelves, they were faced with a new challenger in the console wars, in the form of Sony's PlayStation. The Nintendo 64 was vastly inferior to the PS1.
Does your depravity know no bounds?
No.
Which might not be a popular statement, but that doesn't make it any less true. In Nintendo's infinite wisdom, they began throwing all their most popular IPs at the 64 just to keep up with the PS1. Now all of a sudden, making more Zelda games, more Mario games, and the like were now a big priority to Nintendo, because now they couldn't just rest on their morals, if you will, their past victories. Metroid, of course, wouldn't get a release for the 64, and it has been stated by Yoshio Sakamoto, who at the time had been involved with the development of several Metroid games. He felt that the 64 wouldn't suit a Metroid game. The quirks of the console and the control being just weird to him, he didn't think Metroid was a good fit. Now, that's not to say that the 64 didn't have hits on the platform, one of them being The Legend of Zelda: The Ocarina of Time, and probably the best Legend of Zelda game there ever was, you know? Fight me. No, really though. And as much as I love that game and the Hero of Time, I know that Landstalker had to have helped inspired it, because the PS1 was comfortably stomping a mud hole in the 64. Nintendo now couldn't afford to rest on the success of their past successes. Say that 5 times fast. They needed a win, and as such it was time to blow the dust off The Legend of Zelda, hence the gap between The Link to the Past and the Ocarina of Time. Now they had to start pumping out their IPs. And up until now, Nintendo had been king of the hill, but no more. So like I said, Friday is one indication, but another is the Great Deku Tree, and where Nintendo drew inspiration from Landstalker. One of the major gameplay mechanics of Landstalker is the tree stands, which Landstalker incorporates in a very clever way. First off, a player can go through the entire game without even knowing about the tree stands, as Landstalker doesn't exactly hold the player's hand in guiding them to these tree stands. There are clues to indicate that the first tree stand Nigel comes upon is there, but never is there really any indication that he should even notice it in the first place. Besides all that, Even if the player directs Nigel to the first tree stand, Landstalker chooses to treat it as a mystery. There's other clues later on that passively state that there's more to these trees than meets the eye.
Autobots, roll out!
Yet none of this will mean anything until Nigel finds the one tree stand who has an actual face and can talk to you. This one tree stand with the face tells Nigel that his insides feel sick, and the player can choose to go inside the tree to help clean it. This will reward the player with a teleport mechanic that from now on he can use any tree stand as long as they're matching as a means of warping across the game map, cutting Nigel's travel time in half, in some instances. The catch is that each tree has a twin, and the player must find both twins to unlock the warps they provide. To put it in layman's terms, each stand only warps to one specific location, so it's not a license to bounce around the map. My question to you, my Golden Wonders out there, is thus: does any of what I just described about the tree stands sound familiar? While I would be amiss to say that Link's relationship with the Great Deku Tree isn't one of the most pivotal, nay, one of the most emotional moments of Ocarina of Time, and it's really at the very beginning, no less. The parallels between Nigel meeting the tree stand with a face and Link's quest to rid the Great Deku Tree of his curse are too similar to be coincidence. Yes, Ocarina of Time has way more gravitas in this story plot, but if I'm being honest, Landstalker did it first. So moving along from that, Landstalker's way of leveling Nigel up is odd to me, as in I can't be for sure if I'm correct on how Nigel levels up, meaning the player has to collect what is called livestock that adds hearts to Nigel's HP, which is obviously an influence from The Legend of Zelda, so you know, there you go. These hearts though are what is initially Nigel's health. Now to me, it feels like the more livestock Nigel has, the stronger he's becoming. Granted, he can take more damage, but it kind of feels like his damage output increases also. Eventually, enemies Nigel used to have to hit a few times die in one hit, like the clear bubbles at the very beginning. The first kind of enemy you really have to fight. But that could be because of his equipment also. There are 4 types of swords Nigel can obtain, each doing their own form of elemental damage: fire, ice, electricity, terra. These are neat because they don't just allow for elemental damage on a consistent basis, but have to charge up first. There's a sword indicator in the top left corner that slowly loads an elemental charge, but resets every time Nigel swings his sword, which means that the player shouldn't just swing their sword all willy-nilly, but time their attack so as not to waste a charge, because if you swing at nothing, it resets the charge, and you've wasted all that wait time. Nigel will also get better armor, boots, and rings that will give him an edge while dungeon diving, along with traversing the dangerous island in of itself. There are other items that cure ailments and restore health, but mostly all the rest of the items the player gains are purely situational. Some will only be important maybe once, while others will have lasting effects like the dog whistle. Saving game progress mirrors Shining Force, as the player has to visit a priest to do so, but instead of simply speaking with the priest, Nigel has to pick up a book and set it on the priest's podium. There are several types of books Nigel can choose to give the priest that can cure the various types of status effects that act as ailments to Nigel. Plus, this mechanic is used for purchasing items in stores, staying at inns for the night to restore HP, and looking at a world map. Also, not to mention that Landstalker is a healthy mixture of combat, platforming, and exploration. There are a lot of puzzles in Landstalker, and I can't stress this enough, but the game does not hold the player's hand. So allow me this one contrivance as I make my one real legitimate complaint. There's a dungeon where Nigel gets transformed into a dog, which is fine because it's a pretty neat little side quest that isn't necessary to finishing the game, but I highly suggest doing it. which puts me in a conundrum because it does probably have one of the most awful puzzles ever. The player is required to ride these marbles to activate switches, but because of Landstalker's wonky controlling, it's enough to make newcomers to the game rage quit. Be warned about this dungeon. I highly suggest that if anyone can't get past this at first, don't quit Landstalker forever. Just walk away for a while.
Stop it. Get some help.
Maybe go outside, touch grass, walk the dog, ride a bike, go on a date. Whatever you do, don't give up though, because Landstalker really is worth the effort. Plus, the reward for finishing this side quest is faster recharge of weaponry, so it's worth it in the end. So far, I've talked about the history, story, and gameplay of Landstalker.
But wait! There's more!
Yet, I couldn't end this review without talking about the music, as there are a few bangers offered up by Mototaki Takenouchi. I've talked in length about Yuzo Koshiro in the past, who, without a doubt, is the Mozart of video game music, but I feel what Motoaki Takenouchi, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, sorry, did with Landstalker is too integral not to speak on it. For starters, the score Takenouchi did for the tree stands area is yet another example of something I think Nintendo used when developing The Lost Woods in Ocarina of Time, which subsequently is tied into the Deku Tree in that game. Music plays such a big role in The Lost Woods, and the music used for when Nigel encounters the tree stands is one of Landstalker's most memorable tracks. So just listen. Ocarina of Time uses a heavy amount of upbeat tempo and flute in The Lost Woods, just like Landstalker, and it's too noticeable how similar they are when one is familiar with both games. Just listen to The Lost Woods here. Are they exactly the same? Well, no, but they are spiritual cousins to be sure. Another great track from Takenouchi is the map section. When Nigel puts a map on the counter of a shop, the player gets to see their location on Gola Island for free. I briefly mentioned this mechanic in the gameplay section, but it's the music here that I want to really speak on. It's such a spectacular little track that starts off with these high notes, then goes into this light tempo only to hit this high epic crescendo. I just love it. I could go to sleep with it on a loop, I swear. So just listen to this for yourselves. Lastly, I want to talk about what is probably the most important song in the whole game, and that's Ludwig's Sonata, or Love Theme. Ludwig is an NPC in the game who's in love with a princess that mysteriously disappears, leaving Ludwig heartbroken. In his despair for the loss of his love, he writes this song for her, which doubles as a pivotal transitional moment for Nigel. See, up until this point, Nigel is just a boy. I know that I said I couldn't be sure if he was a boy earlier, but I know he's a boy. I know this because one of the quests in the game before this moment states as much. Sure, he's an accomplished treasure hunter, which is no small feat for a child, but I get the distinct feeling that the Gypta Ruins job is in no way as treacherous as what he's gone through while being on Gola Island. In fact, it vaguely hinted at that this is probably the biggest job he's ever gone on, which is why this moment when he listens to Ludwig's Sonata while attending Duke Mercator's banquet is such a turning point for him. Nigel has now earned the acknowledgement of major figures like the Duke. He's braved extremely difficult dungeons for being only just a boy, and now he stands among two other renowned hunters. I believe this moment illustrates that moment when a child goes from being a youth to an adult, which is why the melody is both somber but beautiful at the same time. Ludwig wrote it to express the loss of his love, but for the player and Nigel, it represents the loss of his childhood, as he is now a man, and the road ahead is only going to get more perilous, much like adulthood. If I were to give this song a title, I would call it Ludwig's Last Lullaby. But alas, it's actually called A Ballad for Princess Loria. For any of you Golden Wonders out there who want to look it up, that's what it's actually called. I'm going to play the ballad in full here. I know I cut the others off short for copyright purposes, but if I get a claim here, well, y'all are worth it. So enjoy. Motoaki Tanuchi knew what he was doing here with this one piece, and I salute him for it. Thank you, Mr. Tanuchi, for creating a song that even to this day still gives me goosebumps and draws emotions and memories of a time when I was young and the world was still full of wonder out of me. This song will always be memorable for me, and I hope it will be for all of you out there who honor me with your presence as well. And that's all she wrote for Landstalker, The Treasures of King Noel. I hope y'all enjoyed my review, and to those of you who have been lifelong fans of this game, I sincerely hope I did it justice in your eyes. The next R&R that I'm going to do will be the final review of this 4-part Best RPGs released by Sega for the Genesis. And even though it isn't my personal favorite of this series, it's hard not to say that it wasn't the best RPG Sega ever made for the Genesis. But y'all will just have to stay tuned and see what game it is. If you like what I did here, please leave a like on the video. And if you didn't like it, then I'm truly humbled that you stayed for the whole thing. If you're new here, then I'd be honored if you'd subscribe. Don't forget to share the video, ring my bell for notifications, sign my guest book letting me know your thoughts, as everyone's voice here is welcome, regardless if we always agree or not. Y'all are important, and I mean this with my heart and soul when I say I love you. Y'all come back now, and stay golden. Hello everyone, welcome to Lord Pog Gaming, and I'm your humble host, Lord Pog. Well, we finally made it here. It's the 4th and final entry into my R&R series, which R&R stands for Retro Review, not Rest and Relaxation, although you're welcome to sit a spell if you like. Take a load off, Benny. But here we are, the final entry into the R&R Best RPGs made for the Sega Genesis. But before we get into all that, let me just say this. I'm blown away by all of you Golden Wonders out there. I'm currently up to over 300 subscribers right now, which is over 300 more than I ever thought I'd get. I know some channels seem to just have blown up overnight, with some being extremely talented, while others are only popular because of impressionable children and weak men.
What did he say?
Regardless, there are over 300 of y'all out there who have taken a chance on me. And and I'm just so blessed by y'all. Thank you so much. And I wish there was more that I could do to show my appreciation, but I'm currently in a bit of a financial pickle, so please just stick with me, and hopefully one day I can afford to put more towards my production. For now, just know I love you all of you Golden Wonders out there, with my very heart and soul.
I promised myself I wouldn't cry.
If there are any new viewers out there, and I got you feeling a type of way, please subscribe to the channel. And regardless of new or old, like and share the video.
Your daisy if you do.
As it helps get my name out there. Also, ring my bell for notifications and sign my guest book if it tickles your fancy. My guest book is what I call the comment section. Just tell me howdy or something like that, or let me know what I could do better. I treat even unflattering comments as constructive, so feel free to speak your mind. Okay? That's all I gotta say. I won't harp on it.
Well, I don't like to harp on a subject,
I don't care. It comes with me, never have. That's why they call me gregarious.
And now for our featured presentation. Lord Pog Gaming presents the final installment of the best RPGs of the Sega Genesis R&R. Phantasy Star 4: The End of the Millennium. When I first started this R&R series based upon the best RPGs for the Sega Genesis, my initial intention was to showcase a set of gaming gems that were otherwise overshadowed at times by the Super Nintendo and its massive collection of RPGs available. If I'm being honest, as far as RPGs in the 90s are concerned, the SNES probably had way more hits than the Genesis did. So it was important to me to relive my childhood by remembering the RPGs that Sega knocked out of the park. For you Golden Wonders out there who remember it as fondly as I do, and for you newcomers who are either being introduced to Phantasy Star 4 for the first time, or have played it before and are just as big of fans as me, an old head, it has been an honor to talk about Beyond Oasis, Shining Force, Landstalker, and now Phantasy Star 4 with y'all. Incidentally, the previous 3 retro reviews can be found on my channel in the R&R playlist.
I made you some content, diving into your favorite open wide.
Released in Japan in December 1993, Phantasy Star 4 was developed and published in-house by Sega. It wouldn't get its American release for another 2 years, when it finally hit stores in '95, costing just under $100.
Damn!
I've actually read a post where OP said they paid $99.99 for the game, which they claim was just $10 more than the Genesis.
Come on now, you expect me to believe that?
Okay, so I'm taking a lot of what I read for face value because, 1, I didn't buy my Sega Genesis, it was a gift. Shout out to my pops buddy Clint for that, and I know he'll never see this. 2, I never bought Phantasy Star 4 either, as it was on the Sega channel. And my pop paid that bill, so who knows how much the Sega channel costed.
It's a weird flex, but...
Sega also claimed they wouldn't release Phantasy Star 4 in Europe, thinking that there wasn't any hype for JRPGs of its caliber there. Only to release the same year as in the US, but 11 months apart, with Phantasy Star 4 hitting stores in February in the US and December in the UK, which my math may be off because I'm atrocious, which is oddly enough part of the reason the game was so darned expensive. Allegedly, Sega America and Sega Japan didn't have a great relationship, and Sega Japan didn't think that Phantasy Star 4 would do well in the US. However, Victor Ireland, who was the founder of Working Designs, which he started in '86, took one look at Phantasy Star 4 and absolutely wanted to license it, since the idea the Working Designs was founded upon was bridging the gap between Japanese and American game designers.
I'd start walking your way, you'd start walking mine. We meet in the middle.
One of the things Victor said in the article in Retro Hangover podcast was that he believed in the project so much that even though cartridges were expensive to manufacture, he was willing to go with it because he knew he had a hit on his hands. Where the swerve from Sega Japan came in is the price of the actual game, as they decided to slap that ridiculous price of $99 on it. In order to sabotage the sales in the US, so that when the game failed, they could call Sega America a bunch of dumb poo-poo heads.
Watch your profanity.
But it didn't work, and Phantasy Star 4, The End of the Millennium, was a success, leaving Sega America to rub it in Sega Japan's faces.
Emotional damage!
And it was all because Victor Ireland and Working Designs' dedication to fix cultural differences in the gaming world. Sadly, Working Designs would close its doors in 2004 due to complications and setbacks that they could not recover from. In 2006, Ireland would announce a new company, Gaijin Works, who have had a hand in publishing such games as the Arc Lad series. The full article for Finance... Ooh, man. Sorry, y'all. I've got a bit of a lisp, and I really have a hard time not... Let's try that again. The full article for Phantasy Star 4 and how it was supposed to fail will be left in the comments for any of you Golden Wonders out there who want to read it. There is another oddity in the differences between the US and Japanese releases of the Phantasy Star 4, but I'm gonna save that for its own section. So bear with me till we get there.
Hold your horses.
For now, just put it as a feather in your cap, since when I learned this, it took me down another nostalgic trip, and finding this out took me way back to my childhood. GamePro gave it a 4 out of 5, but said that the game was derogatory towards women. And okay, I'm gonna rant here.
Here we go again.
First off, Elise Brangwyn, who is the mentor of Chaz Ashley, the game's main protagonist, is by far the greatest hunter in all of Motavia, and the game emphasizes this fact. She's cool, calculated, and all-around force of nature who has earned the respect she has. Throughout the game, everyone that knows her respects her, and everyone knows about her, which subsequently garners respect for her as well. The only times I can think of where they are being, quote, derogatory towards her is when this old owlbear-like dude is offering up her measurements as knowledge. And when the party learns she can cook, and Han, I believe it's Han who acts amazed that she can cook, that are the only two instances I can think of. And Han being amazed she can cook isn't derogatory at all, because she honestly doesn't seem the type. Everyone gets in an uproar because of Rey Palpatine.
Rey Skywalker.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
And calls her a Mary Sue. Yet Elise is the total package too. Yet those very same kind of folks who said the game is derogatory no doubt love the fever dream trilogy that is Star Wars Disney. Honestly, it's no wonder GamePro went belly up in 2011.
Just don't be a dick.
It's too late. Look at me. I'm such a dick.
Moving on, IGN, yes that IGN, gave it a 9 out of 10, but gave Gone Home a 9.5 out of 10.
What the hell is even that?
Electronic Gaming Monthly gave it a 31 out of 40, Eurogamer gave it an 8 out of 10, and the rest pretty much look the same. Phantasy Star 4 has garnered a mostly positive reception, reaching cult status amongst gaming fans, with Complex Networks saying it was the second greatest Genesis game of all time, losing out to Gunstar Heroes. Nintendo Power, before closing their doors, would share a similar sentiment by saying Phantasy Star 4 was one of the greatest RPGs of all time. Pretty humble of them, since originally it was a competitor of theirs. Phantasy Star 4 pretty much plays like a lot of RPGs in those days, with the exception of systems like the Sega Saturn and the ever-looming PlayStation that was on its way. Most RPGs worked on a top-down wandering around an overworld until you randomly get attacked mechanic. Combat usually consists of a turn-based mechanic, where it's the enemy goes, then the party goes, or to try and mix it up a bit, sometimes the player gets to go first, or even crazier, it mixes up the moves where a few monsters will go, then a few players will go, and it alternates like that. Not very mind-blowing by today's standards, I know, but for its time, it was par for the course and good enough for what it was. A few convenient things Phantasy Star 4 offers is the macro mechanics for combat, where you can preset the character's moves in combat, and instead of selecting what they should do every round, fight, block, heal, etc., the player can choose from 9 different customizable macros. Is it 9? I think there are like 9 the player can customize. That helps combat flow a little faster. There. In case you didn't know what a macro is, I just explained it.
What can I say except you're welcome?
Faster flowing combat is important since this is an old school RPG, which means the player is going to hit a random encounter battle every 10 seconds.
Yoinks! And away!
And I'm not kidding. If you thought Pokemon Yellow was bad, or Red and Blue if you're a nerd and didn't play the version where you get to have Pikachu at the very beginning and really feel like Ash,
Maybe you think I'm a little too brash, but the master is here, and my name is Ash. Gotcha!
Just kidding. That was the only Pokemon game I ever played except for Arena for the 64. And that was because my cousin had it. Moving along, besides the annoyance of frequently being attacked, items don't stack in the player's inventory, meaning every single Monomate, which is a healing item, will be present, taking up inventory space. So instead of buying, say, 10 of them, then seeing Monomate times 10, the player will see 10 actual Monomate instead. So forget about buying 100 of them, because unless you want to actually gather other gear and buy other items, the player is going to have to treat this like a survival horror and put their brain to work. It's terrifying, I know, but it does add a level of realistic planning for every dungeon the player encounters. A couple of other bugaboos,
You my little boo thing.
annoyances I should say. There's no world map, so it can be a little easy to get lost when traversing the overworld. Most skills and techniques, which effectively act like spells, don't come with comprehensive details to what they are or what they do, so there's gonna need to be trial and error, to which I suggest doing as early as when a new skill or technique is acquired. Granted, there very well could be a way to observe what a skill or technique does somewhere in the menu, and I just didn't find it the last time I played Phantasy Star 4 for this review. I very well could have found it when I was a kid, and that's why I remember a lot of it. But now I'm an old man, and even simple technology escapes me. If any of y'all know where to go to find the explanations in the game, well then congratulations to you.
Check out the big brain on bread.
Because I missed it. I know it sounds like I'm complaining a lot, and that's just to get the elephant out of the room. Honestly, I love Phantasy Star 4, and what it does right, it really does right. But instead of listing it all off like I did its faults, instead I'd rather give any of you Golden Wonders out there who haven't played it a strategy to use that helps in the first act of the game. The first 3 characters the player will obtain will be Elise, Chaz, and Han. Phantasy Star 4, even for its time, is a beautiful game, opting to do a more comic book illustration style for its key story moments, which helped to enhance the graphics on the limited system it was on. which also serves to make the game come more alive. It isn't long before the player feels like they know Elise, Chaz, and Han, and what they are about. Elise is the swift attacker who can hit multiple enemies at once, so focus on giving her 2 weapons in each hand instead of a shield, ASAP. Chaz is the more in the enemy's face, doing bigger damage kind of guy. Giving him a shield is okay until the player gets their first 2-handed weapon for Chaz. After that, just make sure that he has the best armor he can get and let him loose. As for Han, well, he's a bit of a mixed bag. Where he shines is in the support and utility, but he's capable of damage techniques also. The AI will attack Han's relentlessly, even when it doesn't make sense, meaning the game will work to kill the best healer, making it very difficult to level Hans up. Since everyone alive at the end of the fight levels up, but if anyone falls during it, then they gain no experience, regardless of how much they have contributed while alive. Best way around all this with Han is forget about giving him a weapon, and instead equip him with 2 shields, and keep him in the best armor available. He won't be able to melee attack, but he'll block most damage towards him effectively. What the player needs to do is focus on him using res, which is the healing, by the way, or blocking attacks if it doesn't make sense to heal anyone that round. Set up macros that basically alternate between these 2 things for him, while making sure Elise and Chaz are doing as much damage output as they can. Skills are like techniques, but instead of using TP, not toilet paper.
Why are you like this?
TP stands for technique points, and in the case of skills, instead of using TP, they have a set amount of uses. Hans has a skill called Vision that is pretty handy early on. It grants dexterity to all the allies except for the androids.
That's racist.
Chaz and Elise both have skills that do significant damage, so again, set the macros. Don't worry about what equipment can be used by who, since the game does a good job at indicating who can use what. Give Han 2 shields, as much armor as possible, and focus on keeping him alive so he can level up efficiently. It won't be long before some of the macros can be used to focus on Han's damage techniques, like Watt or Zan. Since Han gets the largest TP pool in the beginning. Now, let me pause here for a minute. It might seem tempting to say that Rune actually has the better TP amount.
Oh, well, allow me to retort.
But if you've never played this, then trust me when I say it's better to trust in Han and not even worry about Rune. Granted, Rune does spit that super hot fire called Foy, but stick with Han and you won't go wrong. Keep him alive, especially for any and all boss fights, and when dealing with the Worm Ranch. Eventually, you'll get another big hitter named Grizz, and another swift fighter named Rika. Keep everyone in the best equipment possible, using the only best shields equipped to Han. Mistakes are going to be made, and no matter how hard the player tries, Han is still going to be downed a few times. That's why it's in the player's best interest to keep a fair amount of telepipe and escape pipe in their inventory. Stop it right now.
Stop it. Get some help.
Really, it's not in the player's best interest to allow any of the characters to be down. So using an escape pipe to teleport out of a dungeon, then a telepipe to get to a town if one isn't near, is the best strategy. Money is pretty easy to acquire, so rest and heal at an inn and try again until Elise's house is unlocked. Then just telepipe to her town and rest for free. Then telepipe back to the nearest town of the dungeon that was causing issues. Alternatively, Chaz gains the Ryuka and Hinnis techniques. Ryuka acts as the telepipe, and Hinnis acts as the escape-a-pipe, which is good to know in case the player doesn't have any telepipe or escape pipe in their inventory. This strategy of keeping Han alive to level and gain TP will help keep the other players alive better. And should any of the characters get downed, using Telepipe, Escape Pipe, Ryuka, and Hinnis to bounce around and revive will carry the player all through the first act of the game, and to Xio's temple. Beyond that, let's just say the game changes, and so should the player's strategy. To put it in better perspective...
Too much. There's too much fucking perspective now.
I cannot give you any more information beyond the first act. I would then have to ruin some important plot elements. Instead, I urge any of you Golden Wonders out there who haven't played Phantasy Star 4, The End of the Millennium, to give it a try. It's 99 cents on Steam, but I think you'll also have to purchase an emulator, which costs a little more. So if you're not into that, I get it. But despite all that, however you do it, I implore you to play Phantasy Star 4, The End of the Millennium. The plot for Phantasy Star 4 is a bit of an interesting one, since it takes place 1,000 years after Phantasy Star 2, but 1,000 years before Phantasy Star 3. I find this interesting because most movies and games might create their initial product, then release a prequel to act as a type of sequel, only then to release an actual sequel. But it's not too often that the fourth installment of a franchise will be a prequel for the third installment, which is by all accounts what Phantasy Star 4 is.
No way!
So as before, Phantasy Star 4 takes place 1,000 years after the Great Collapse on the planet Motavia, who has seen better days.
I've seen better days.
As it's largely become a desert planet.
I don't like sand.
Biomonsters are becoming a large, uncontrolled problem for the population, but there's something sinister behind the ever-increasing outbreak. This is where our starting protagonists enter the picture. Elise Brangwyn and her headstrong apprentice, Chaz Ashley. They are what is known as hunters, and what a hunter does is eliminate pesky biomonsters. Problem is, there's been an increase of the biomonster numbers, and there isn't enough hunters per capita to fend off every threat. Elise is the best there is.
I'm the best there is at what I do, but what I do isn't very nice.
And even if she can't handle every outbreak, she sure does try. This takes the player to the beginning of the game, where Elise and Chaz are hired by Piata Academy to investigate a biomonster problem in the Academy's basement. It's all very RPG D&D.
I'm attacking the darkness!
Y'all meet in a tavern to kill giant rats in the cellar, you know, type of thing. But while there, Elise and Chaz meet Han. At least I think his name is Han. There's no voice acting, and his name is spelled H-A-H-N. So do with that the best you can. He's a student of the Academy who's looking for clues about his lost professor, who went missing while investigating something or some such in another town. And I know it sounds like I'm downplaying this a bit, and I don't mean to. There's a lot of side characters and places with far out names.
Far out.
But for the sake of consistency, Han's professor's name is Holt, and he went missing in Birth Valley, and now Han is trying to find out why. To his credit, Han knows that the Academy is covering something up, which Elise suspects too. While speaking with the Academy's principal, and yeah, his name is Principal, and that's all I know.
Lay off me!
Elise questions the principal a little too much about the biomonsters in the basement, to which he promptly acts indignant and tells her to do her job. So Elise knows there's more to it than just a little outbreak, but she agrees to let Han tag along. Oh, did you think that Elise let Han join out of the goodness of her heart like some regular typical RPG? Oh, no, my Golden Wonders. Elise is a businesswoman, and she taxes that booty.
Nobody
Nobody says the B word. Come on.
And promptly extorts 100 meseta from Han as payment to let him tag along. Meseta is what the currency is called. I'm sure that was pretty clear, but I've been being a little cheeky, so I was compelled to explain this. I love y'all. Eventually, Elise, Chaz, and Han discover that the reason the principal has been being so insidious is because he was warned by a dark magician named Zio to stay away from Birth Valley. Han, however, says to that, not gonna happen, and Elise extorts more money out of him in exchange for her help. I love Elise. There are a few more instances in the game where she basically strong-arms money out of Han, and it's such a gem every time. To be fair, she is the equivalent of a hired mercenary, and she's got to eat too. The one that really gets me though is when Han mentions his wedding fund. Oh man, is she brutal. Without spoiling the game any further, let's just say this. After meeting several other companions, who Elise doesn't charge to join the group, and I know it feels like I'm stuck on this whole Elise taking money from Han thing, but it's only because as tough as she seems on him, there's a real special interaction they end up having. And no, it's not that.
Time to grow up.
But yeah, when it's all said and done, the group will eventually face Zio the first time, and learn there's more to him than meets the eye.
You got the touch. You got the Arise, Rodimus Prime. Optimus.
There are several memorable characters the group will meet, like Rune, Rika, and Seth, to name a few. But it's the generational storytelling that makes Phantasy Star 4 so impactful, as Phantasy Star as a series is akin to such great science fiction books as the Dune series and the Foundation series, with their stories spanning entire generations and hundreds, if not thousands of years, taking you from one protagonist to the next, because the story in of itself isn't ultimately about the characters, but it's about this underlying threat, some greater purpose that each of the series' protagonists find themselves stuck in and a part of. The magic that Zio is harnessing is something that has been a long-running trope throughout Phantasy Star, and much in the way of stories like the Three-Body Problem, the issue faced in Phantasy Star 4 is a series spanning one, but the testament to Phantasy Star 4's story is how well it caps the series off. Even with the returning plot, as it were, the story still feels fresh. And again, the comic book cutscenes are fantastic. I can't recommend Phantasy Star 4 End of the Millennium enough. And I encourage all of you Golden Wonders out there who have never played it to do so, as it is a must for any retro RPG gamer. Before closing this review, I wanted to talk about my childhood a little. Not about anything that requires unpacking my psyche or anything like that. No, I just mean how neat of a time period it was for things like Phantasy Star and other said stuff in the 90s to be coming out and what it was like to be a part of that time. To do this, I'm going to talk about the artwork for the game's cover and how when looking into that, I discovered something I never knew. It's an odd little connection, and I'll try not to take forever to do so.
You're a bit late for that!
Over in Japan, the cover art for Phantasy Star 4 is pretty much what one would expect. It's accurate to the characters of the game and looks highly anime. Yet it's not the box art in Japan I want to talk about, but the art done for the game here in my home of the States. Boris Vallejo was hired to do the cover art for the American release, and his is not an anime style whatsoever. Vallejo's style is more of the hyper-realistic, much in the same way of Frank Frazetta, who's known for his Conan the Barbarian artwork, and first-gen D&D, with everything having that sword and sorcery grit to it. The cover art for Phantasy Star 4 would have this look featuring Chaz, Rika, and Rune on the cover, with Rune looking more like Han. Love it or hate it, the style Vallejo presents here is something that Marvel Comics would commission him to do for their Masterpiece card sets in the 90s. Vallejo gave the Marvel Universe a much more hyper-realistic feeling, making it feel more dark and believable.
This is just the beginning.
I had a collection of them myself, but time and bad choices unfortunately saw to me not having them anymore. I bring all this up because despite the American art for Phantasy Star 4 not matching the typical anime style that is presented in the game, I've always felt a type of way for Vallejo's depiction of what a more realistic version of the characters would look like. Perhaps it's tied to the fact that I was both collecting the Marvel Masterpiece cards and playing the game around the same time in my life. So it's very probable that my eye was trained to appreciate this type of art.
It means that I, like God, do not play with dice and do not believe in coincidence.
But for me, to see two beloved memories of my childhood linked together in the most random fashion makes me think that there are no coincidences in life, just happy accidents.
Don't worry about it. We don't make mistakes. We have happy accidents.
And so as we finally close out the final installment of my retro reviews of the 4 best RPGs on the Sega Genesis, I want each of you Golden Wonders out there to think back and remember those happy accidents. Odds are they are connected in ways you'd never even imagine. So think back and hold on to them for just a moment. Then grab that brilliant imagination you once had as a kid and drag it back with you and see the world as you once did.
We are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of dreams.
It's inspiration that makes the world go round. Don't let your dreams die, folks. Pursue your passions, but remain grounded. Follow your heart, but use your head. And remember, nothing is beyond you. It's like Batman once said, everything is impossible until somebody does it. Thank you everyone who stuck around to the end. I know I've been promising this video for a while now. Well, I finally got it done, and I hope y'all enjoy it. If you're new and you like what I do here, then feel free to subscribe. My channel is easy to navigate as I try to have easy to use playlists and try to have a little something for everyone on there. Like and share, sign my guest book, and ring my bell for notifications. And as always, regardless if we share the same views on the real world issues, our love for gaming stands us on common ground. And that unites us despite the real world divides. I love y'all and would fight any horde or foe by your sides. You're always welcome in my lobby. Y'all come back now. Stay golden.